Hey guys, good evening, everybody. We're back after a 4-day break. My name is Stuart Davis. Welcome to the program, A Flawed Man of God. I am a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor, not a biblical scholar, and I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What I'm here to do is talk about God, talk about Jesus, talk about the Holy Spirit, talk about the Bible, talk about Christianity, talk about a wide variety of current events, issues, and topics through the perspective of myself, who I consider your average Christian guy. I've been a Christian all my life, 40 years, non denominational Protestant. I don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination. I'm just in the Word daily, trying to get it right each day. Sometimes I do it, and other times I don't. Either way, either way, I am a work in progress, as we all are. So, if you are somebody who is very interested in learning more about Christianity, if you're curious about Jesus, if there's a voice in the back of your mind wondering if there's more to your existence than just this life on earth, welcome to the show. Hopefully, you can get something out of this. It's a very lay approach. I'm not a learned person by any means, so I'm not going to give you the in-depth details and all the facts and all the studies and everything. I'm just going to talk about what I know. And maybe, hopefully, that helps springboard you into a relationship with Christ. Um, if you are already somebody who enjoys, if you're already a Christian and somebody who enjoys Christian topics and discussion, by all means, uh, chime in. We've got a great chat here. Folks are coming in pretty quickly. Normally it takes a few minutes, but got a great group of regulars. They're in here um, day in and day out, and always chiming in with their opinions, chiming in with their takes, any type of experience, talking about what's going on around us, and it's awesome. It makes the show that much better. So I encourage you to do the same. If you've got something to say it. If you think that I'm right or wrong on an issue, let me know. We're still such a small group that if you type something in and put it in that chat, I'm going to read it and I'm going to respond to it. And with that said, how's everybody doing? Nico, Blaine, and Mr. Felty, it's good to see you guys. It's been a bit of a break. Had a nice long, well well overdue chat with my fellow deacons and elders on Thursday night. It was very good, and lots of laughs and a lot of frank conversation. It's good to have that. If you're in any type of leadership position, especially if you're like in kind of a junior leadership position, which is what I consider a deacon to be, it's important to keep communication, right? And from the elder standpoint, it's important to communicate with the people around you. It doesn't mean you have to share the business with everybody. What goes on in your meetings can somewhat stay in there. But if you want your deacons to support you, if you want to keep everybody on the same page, that means communicating. And sometimes you really don't. I don't say sometimes. All the time, it never is enough time during church to get all that stuff done. So it's been great that we get this time together to kind of just sit down, relax, have a beer. Not for me the past couple of months. Have a beer and um, and just joke around, catch up, and see how everybody's doing, and talk about stuff that's been striking us over the month. Glad that I'm a part of it, and glad that I've got just a great group of leaders who will hear me out and hear my fellow deacons out and tell us what's going and kind of give us a little bit of what's going on in their head, and that helps us. That really does help us. So Thursday was great. Friday we had We just had a lot going on. Usually I put a message in the Discord. Sorry guys if I didn't give you guys a heads up. I try to be better than that, and I will try to be better than that in the future. What's going on this week? Not much. I think I might take tomorrow off to do taxes. I got the final documents I needed today to do taxes. And I hate doing them. And I've already got a preliminary idea of what's coming out. The taxes sucked this year more than they ever have. More than they ever have. I haven't crunched all the numbers, but I got a decent idea what it's gonna look like. So it's not fun, guys. It's not fun at all. It's not it's not a good time. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. Hopefully a safe weekend, dude. People can do some pretty stupid stuff on Super Bowl Sunday and Super Bowl weekend. And I'm sure that social media is full of Philadelphians blowing up their televisions because that's what happens sometimes. Good game. I watched it. I'm not as anywhere near the football fan that I used to be, especially when it comes to the NFL. College football, however, Notre Dame all the way. But not into the NFL as soon as they started making it into a I don't know. They haven't made it friendly for folks if you don't sign up for exactly the type of political messaging they like. But yes, it was a good game and enjoyed it. I actually grew up a Chiefs fan, so I got to have fun doing that. We went over to a friend's house, and one of his daughters decided she was going to be an Eagles fan that day, and she was all up in my face about it. And then we left early because I had to make sure my kids went to bed, and we weren't going to watch the degeneracy that was the halftime show, especially after seeing what went on with the Grammys. Right? I'm not interested in seeing it. And if you don't get, and I know that most of y'all are like, who cares about the Grammys? Nobody watches the Grammys. Might not even know what went on about the Grammys, and I wouldn't have either had I not seen people not been sharing clips about it. And if you saw any of that disgusting display that went on during the Grammys and during the halftime show, you understand how absolutely lost a big chunk of American culture is right now. It's disgusting. Anyway, Nico first. Blaine's in here. Yo, what's going on, buddy? Mr. Felty, always glad to have you in the chat. Emmanuel Sorio. Oh, yeah. Note. I think, oh, yeah, nice to see you guys after a hectic weekend. Going to take my CDL exam tomorrow. God help me pass the test. I got this. CDL A or CDL B? I work around a lot of drivers, a lot of truck drivers. It is a absolutely marketable skill and license to have. Got to keep clean, but if you put the work in, save your money up. It ain't nothing easy about driving a truck, especially if you're over the road. It's not for the to me it's got to be a hard life to have a family. Young single men, man, all daggone day, put that money aside and maybe start, maybe buy a truck, become an owner operator, maybe get a small fleet and let the money start rolling in. Then you start hiring drivers. Next thing you know, you got a tiny little transportation company, but man, it's rolling it in. We need drivers. The two things that a lot of people don't realize right now that we need logistically in this country, truck drivers, and diesel mechanics. Class 6 to 8 truck mechanics, period. Whether it's in these electric trucks they're building or the diesel truck they're building, we need them big time. Big time. And I'm still waiting. If my company ever pays for me to get my CDL, I am going to be on it all day long. Get my CDLB with a hazmat endorsement on it. And maybe an A. But yeah, Emmanuel, best of luck for you. Best of luck for you. Be praying for you. Hopefully, be praying for you, and have that work out for you. It should be interesting. Do you have any? Well, I don't want to dox you at all. I was going to ask if you had any trucking companies that were either have already hired you or interested in you, or that you were looking at joining. You don't have to answer that, obviously. Nico, with the ever appropriate taxation is theft. There are three things that we know are eternal: God, death, and eternal taxes. But also eternal life if we are if we get our salvation. Rihanna was basically on Final Destination map of Smash Brothers. Yeah, I heard there were dancers that were supposed to be indicative of sperm, and she was pregnant, like legitimately pregnant, which, she's married. I'm assuming, I'm hoping she's married, and the husband's the father. You can't tell in Hollywood these days. Doesn't matter. But it's fun for that's appropriate for the whole family, right? Right? That's appropriate. I feel like everything just fell off the rails with Janet Jackson's titty coming out on television. There was, I think when you think back on it, I feel like there were some moments in the 90s that really, really kind of broke some barriers, some important barriers that we're seeing the results of now. We had the Monica Lewinsky thing go on, and a lot of people just give it a pass and be like, yeah, he's always got a blowjob in the Oval Office. A lot of nobody cared that he was married. That seemed not to be an issue. And the religious right really couldn't get the right message out there to try to tell people that this is wrong. This is something as a society and as a culture we should feel is wrong. There was that. There was the Janet Jackson Timberlake Super Bowl halftime thing. It just felt like the Ellen DeGeneres show. These were just things that came out and just broke some pretty important barriers where I think that people were like, no, we're not going to go this far in media. And they just went there anyway. Things just happened. And how do we fix it? Pendulum's got a lot of force, but it can be very disheartening when you see things like what goes on at the Grammys, when you see and people that should know better, right? People who should know better. I was very, very disappointed. But when you have basically Satan worship on display and a complete and total desecration of the Last Supper as part of the production, and you've got CBS tweeting, we're ready to worship right before it happens. There's a lot of theories about what goes on in Hollywood. Gave a lot of credence to what those theories have to say, and I think it's a sad state that these folks live in. What they live in, they've been these folks have been given every opportunity to learn about Christ. These aren't folks living in the wilderness who don't know anything about them, anything about Jesus. They know he's out there. They know the word's out there. They laugh at it. They make fun of it, and they're not the first. If you're getting stuff out of this part of the Bible, from Genesis to where we're all on now, you'll find that people want to laugh at God, laugh at goodness, laugh at honor, because they're not good people, or they're in a very bad place, and they don't want to be held accountable. And I think that if any of you guys, there's times where we haven't wanted to be held accountable ourselves. The difficult thing is trying to explain to my kids that people like this exist. But we have streams like this. If you want the good news beyond what the good news of the gospel is, if you want the good news about society, it is that streams like mine exist. I'm not the only person out there. I'm not the only Christian with a podcast. I'm not the only person on Twitter arguing for this. There's bigger, better, more personable folks than me with bigger followings out there doing the same thing. There's churches. There is a real world. Believe it or not, there is a real world full of people who just don't watch this stuff and don't care, because they've already realized a long time that Disney, that the music industry is full of a bunch of degenerates, and that the real people that you can get entertainment from is not a comedy stand-up by Amy Schumer trying her hardest to be funny, but only being an all-star at looking like a potato. But there's real people that you can have a lot of laughs with a few miles away down the road. You want to meet and have dinner? I was dying laughing Thursday night during my meeting, from a guy who had a lot put on him in the last 12 months. Oh man, I got a deep amount of respect for. Mind you, I have an absolutely I have a great deal of respect for the elders at my church. Each and every one of them I know on a personal level. And this guy has a lot of responsibility, and he's had a lot put on him in the past few months. It's been difficult. But he's still there. It is, making me laugh, having a ball. So So those things are important. So Nico said there was a Grammy. What Grammy? Music. That's what I said. Nobody talks about my Grammy like that. Emmanuel, I only know that because of the memes. It did kind of look like a Smash Brothers level, though. With Smash being a very different term than what they mean in the game. Anyway. Going for your CDLA. Good. Good. You might as well. If you're going for your CDL, you might as well go for the CDLA. Said it's in my family's bloodline. So you should be good. Good. Get on it. I want a fleet of 10 at least because I messed up, became an alcoholic, but I thank God that I had good people around me and family, and I'm rebuilding myself. Yeah. And that's actually one of the beautiful things about the trucking industry, right? We need just about anybody. So that if you've got talent and you've got a work ethic, because look, I've like I said, I work around a lot of drivers. I've come across people who, and you've probably heard this before, people who drive and people who just hold a steering wheel. And I've seen people come in all sorts of complaints, and they hate the work, and they hate. Did you see the recent video on where the driver he gets up and he's talking about how he hates being a truck driver, and he's freaking out. Why did his truck break down? He's got a flat tire on his trailer. It's like, dude is driving a brand new T680 Kenworth. That is a nice truck, right? Which means you're working for a fleet that spends money. And so you're going to have somebody out there to replace that tire for you. All you got to do is sit there. And yeah, it's going to it's probably going to delay you. It's probably going to mess some things up. But they're not going to fire you unless you're messing up. Maybe they're not the problem. Maybe you're the problem. But yeah, that video, and if I could pull it up, I probably would. We shouldn't make fun of people, but I mean, it's just like this is a job, right? And you're working for a company that's invested enough in you. A brand new T680. First off, they're very hard to get. Getting new trucks, period, is hard to get. Putting you in a brand new T680 is a $170,000 truck right now. So there you go. You're more than welcome to, Emmanuel. It's up to you. I'm just out of professional curiosity. Nika said, "Oh, is it one of the Satan music thing? I'm so out of the loop these days. You're not missing anything. I mean, it's not really worth it's not even worth your time. But I mean, if you see it, you'll be like, oh yeah, people suck, big time." Blaine, I have a food protection manager certification tomorrow. Not hard, but funny because a chef on a show we watched listed as one of their certifications. It's literally, do your employees wash their hands? Hopefully you wash your hands. Emmanuel, I like the gay marriage bill once it was passed. That's when I saw the slippery slope occur, but I'm still fairly young, so that was my point of view. I was getting out of the Army when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was first being proposed to end. And it was very interesting, and I wasn't as firm in my convictions at the age of 24, 25, 26, 26 as I am now. But I kind of said as my issue was more of in the realm of the logistics behind it, right? Because we've integrated women into the military, which is I think is which I will say is a mistake, and I've got real reasons why. And it's not to say that a woman cannot pick up a rifle and shoot, but there are other factors to consider in that. But when they did that, meant you can't have them. This isn't Starship Troopers, right? We don't have women and men showering together. That would violate some modesty rules. That would create a perhaps tense situation. Mind you, there are some ladies who join the military service specifically to meet guys. And that's always a recipe for trouble. And it happens on a regular basis. So when you add the over factor of now we will allow people to serve openly. That means that they're not reticent at hiding their preference, and that could make things awkward, right? If you're showering with a man who's physically attracted to you, that might be a little weird. Now, I'm not saying these aren't closed-in showers. This is a bay area. But look, I've been on bases where the toilet stalls don't have walls or doors to them. You just stare at each other, right? It's definitely an interesting thing to get used to, especially me coming from a very small rural area. But when I said that, I was like, oh, and there were some people, and I thought they were weird at the time, and they said, oh no, as soon as they bring out don't ask, don't tell, they're gonna let the transgendered start serving. And everybody was like, no, that's stupid. There's so much, there's medications that you have to take. There's psychological issues. It's like that you couldn't get in the Army if you had these problems. We had these mental problems. And we were like, no. 6 months after they dropped don't ask, don't tell, that's when they started advocating for bringing transgendered into the Army. And we're into the military, and well, look, they're not just in the Navy anymore, as the joke, as the rest of the services joke about it. But yeah, slippery slope. It's about as slippery a slope as you can think of. And it is full on momentum on that. And it has gotten weird. Only California has state mandated soap. What soap did they mandate? Is it satanic worship or satanic panic? Satanic panic wasn't a problem. Peter Branscombe, a female comedian. Now that's funny. Is it though? Is it laughing? Is it really? Are you really laughing? Emmanuel, there are many Christians that are either doing their own thing, following God's commands, or never broadcasting because they are doing the work. Right. Like I said, there are better people who are better speakers and everything, and they don't put it on. They're not on YouTube or doing these other things. They do it in their communities. Right. I belong to a very small church, like I said, 150 folks on a good day. On a good Sunday, maybe getting close to 200, not counting the kids. That's not a whole lot. And I can think of 5 people off the top of my head who can do it better than me. MR, heyo! Said, I'm sober 7.5 years. Keep it strong. Well done, MR. Porcupine sup, gents. Hey, look. Fasting. Those 40 days is up. Yours 40 days, I think, is up. My 40 days ends on Friday. Might have some alcohol on the stream. Might have some. Yeah. I've seen video of trucker try to block the whole highway, then turned over. The selfishness of some truck drivers. Some truckers is insane. Oh, it's a wide variety, right? There's a wide variety. There are a lot of cool truck drivers. Met plenty of cool truck drivers, and then there's a lot more that are just out there. almost like being in the Army. That's the joke. We'll take anybody, and we get everybody. Alex Moore, good evening, good day to you, sir. Good to have you here over from Blaine Stream. Emmanuel, all I can say is that look up the Drexel streams and he talks about the Army chicks or anything in that space. Oh, I know more about it than he does. He knows about it through his brother. I know more about it than he does. I have opinions. I've deployed. I have deployed. Are there any good Christian girls in the Army? Yeah. Yeah. I'll point you towards the Air Force first, though. There are some real degenerate women and dudes from what I hear from the military areas of the red pill spaces. The military is a difficult culture to really put into. It's military culture is its own culture, and it's difficult for me with coming from the background to kind of reconcile this. We deploy. There are a number of guys that I deploy with immediately start hooking that are married or in committed relationships, immediately start cheating. They start cheating before we go overseas with the local women outside the base, and then they find a chick or start looking for chicks once we do deploy. They're in their own base, and the chicks are looking for it too, right? Becomes a total hookup culture at that point. And meanwhile, back at home, some of the same stuff is happening. We call him Jody. The guy Jody. He's getting your girl. He's getting with your sister. He's messing everything up at home, and it happens. We had a guy that I don't want to tell people's stories, but men have left their wives while they were overseas, and women have left their husbands while the men were overseas. It's happened on both sides. So it's hard to really nail down. You've got to have a strong relationship, and it's not for the faint of heart. I'm glad when I was in the military, I was single. I didn't care if I lived or died, which probably wasn't healthy. Didn't care if I lived or died, and didn't have anybody at home other than my parents, which God bless them. They got me back in one piece. There are a lot of people in the military who are married with kids, and I can't imagine the stress on both sides. I've seen it. I've been close to. I was very, very good friends with my platoon sergeant, and his wife was going nuts without him there, and both of them, and his daughter was scared that he wasn't coming home, and she was having issues with that. And all of that is understandable. And they kept everything the way it's supposed to be taken care of. He didn't have a wandering eye, and neither did she. But she missed him dearly, and she was worried. And he was stressed out because of her worrying and her kids and his daughter's worrying. It sucks. It sucked to see. And I was glad that I was going to. So about a year after I got married, I was already out. There's always been the military's gone through some really dark places. Vietnam was a very, very bad time. And immediately after that, in the 80s, it took the Reagan administration, whatever generals he put in place, changing the culture. There were times where if you were an officer in the 80s, early 80s, you didn't go mess with the enlisted in their barracks. You might end up dead. Things were bad back then. and all the fragging and all that stuff that you saw in Platoon and Full Metal Jacket was a little bit overly dramatized. Stuff did happen. And it wasn't, I was glad all that stuff was cleaned up when I joined in 2001. But at that point, the ideal military that I was expecting, that I was walking into, was great and easy to look forward to in basic. Especially, I went to Fort Knox. It was all male basic training, so there wasn't a lot of drama, the extra drama. It was just guys going through a very stressful time, and mostly very young men being broken down and built back up, and learn to have confidence in themselves and be in better shape, and learn, some basic warrior skills, I guess. It's basic training. It's very basic, but it is a very interesting experience where the ideal soldier is pressed upon you. And this is what, and I soaked that in. I love that. I was the idealist. I joined the military because I wanted to serve, because I wanted to protect my family and my the country and everything. I was 17 when I enlisted. That was where I came in. The college money was good too, because I knew that it was either that or get a loan. But the real reason I joined was because I wanted to just serve in the Army, and I wanted to be a pilot. That's why I joined. And then once you got out of your initial training, that's when reality ends up setting in. And if you go to a really good duty station, hey man, you're set. Some people deal with, and I had fun, but the politics that are, Army aviation has a lot of politics involved, and I've never been one to be able to hold back some of my feelings at times. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. You do what you're supposed to. That doesn't sit well. And if you're not willing to bend rules for people, they remember. And most of the time, they're more important than you are, especially in their mind. But yeah, it's the military culture. It's wild. It's wild, and it's difficult. It's one of those things where you kind of have to experience it to really get it. But it's got a lot of problems. Bankrupts issues. There's a whole lot of other issues too, because you've got a lot of young guys getting paid regularly. They don't have to pay for their basic housing, or they want to get out of the barracks, and the best way to get out of the barracks and get paid more is to get married and have kids. And so they get married to the first stripper that winks at him and smiles at him, and she'll start pumping out kids, because she knows that that's easy. She doesn't have to be a stripper anymore. You'll buy either a Dodge Challenger or a Toyota pickup truck or some import, and you'll get it at a ridiculous, like a 35% interest rate. She starts spending the money. He's spending the money. There's no financial responsibility. That goes up. That ends up getting pushed to his squad leader. He's got to deal with it. There's stress at home because of that, and all the other things that come along with being in the military. So they're yelling at each other. The sanctity of marriage isn't as important as it was decades ago. So, both of them are cheating. It's insane. It's insane. And that's not the stomp on it. There are people out there. I'm trying to get. There's a guy on Facebook or Instagram. He's got like a Wisconsin accent. He does all the idioms of the weird things about the military. It's very funny. But he comes back and he goes, the military's given me a lot, and the military gave me a lot as well. But it's not roses. It's not all sunshine and roses. But at the same time, if I look at the Grammys, Civilian life's got just as big, got even worse problems. Might be a little weird. My buddy always told me about a story where the PT had them doing push-ups until someone told him something insane. Guy jumped up, whipped out his dong, and tried to shove it in an M203. I absolutely believe it. I've got some stories. A lot of them are weird stories. It's weird. Tried because it couldn't fit. Wait, hold on. An M203? M203 is that big around, guys. It'll fit. Oh, never mind. He said, don't put this on stream. Too late. Like, I don't read ahead sometimes. Porcupine, yes, sir. Had a few drinks, have gotten sloshed, been enjoying the sober mornings and not feeling extra tired. Yeah, I'll probably be easy on it. So, Alex Moore, you didn't sleep with the mechanics ladies, did you? No, I made a vow that I was not going to hook up with any of the women I deployed with, and I was not really tempted. Not really tempted. I did, while I was in the Army, I did, there was an Air Force girl and a Army PSYOPs girl. Both had issues. Good ladies, but issues. Mr. Wiseman, my boy. Good evening from exotic Chester, Virginia. It's good. How you doing, Mr. Wiseman? He's got some military stories on too, I'm sure. Emmanuel, or even crazier that there are some, and I got news for you. That means you're gay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Reagan for no fault divorce and the war on drugs messed a lot of stuff up. Like, nobody's perfect. I think he was trying to do the best he could. We just didn't understand. We didn't understand things then as well as we do now. I mean, look, if you saw hippies, if you lived with hippies like he did, you'd probably want to get rid of all that stuff as well. Yeah, I know Guts theme. I know. I love that. No, we're not doing sad Naruto song. Guys are coming in. We got a lively crew here tonight. Chat's got me talking for 40 minutes. Sounds like your fellow Army ladies were handsome women. The thing I do, even then, I listen. And it doesn't take a whole lot of listening to understand that there might be a situation you don't want to get involved in. Yeah. Either Fitz or the guys known statewide. Yes. Oh. Yes. All right. So there you go. That's the weekend wrap up, right? Let's get into tonight's reading. Get into tonight's reading. All right. So, you may recall at some point during Elijah's time, Elijah, not Elisha, that he was commanded to go put some people in charge. One of them was Jehu. The other, well, let's start from the beginning. We'll end with Jehu. The first one was Hazael, supposed to be put in charge of Aram. and he came in charge. He was also tasked with going find his own replacement, Elisha, which he did. And there was also a man named Jehu who was supposed to come to power in Israel. And we kind of were wondering when he was actually going to show up. He doesn't show up actually until Elisha gets things done. And this is what we're going to list in tonight's reading. And some very interesting things are going to happen. Some justice is going to get dealt out. And I think we'll appreciate this. But before we get into reading, Emmanuel, I'm glad that the chat and you are not uptight about memes and cultural criticisms because you go to church. They have a willful ignorance to all of it. I don't think it's a willful ignorance, but look, not many people. You have to be kind of a creature of the internet to know some of this stuff. Right? I could talk to this stuff to people I'm friends with on the level, and some of them will agree or had similar experiences with. They're going to look at me like like they never, like I've got antenna growing out of me. We could share stuff that you see on Twitter, and they've just never heard of it because some people just live in the real world. Some people only get on Facebook legitimately to say, "Oh, go Eagles," or, here's what we did when we went on vacation. And that's their life on social media. That's it. I got a couple of friends, got no social media. Have no desire to do that. It's not willful ignorance just so much as they're just not exposed to it. And they're always kind of surprised at some of the things that I share with them. Mind you, also, my wife was one of those people too. She gets the news for celebrities and everything because there's some interest there, but that's pretty much it. She is very much a person. Leave the people who are obsessed with the world to themselves. And I've got some respect for that. But I've got the memes. I try to keep it PG-13 for the most part from my conduct on here, right? And I'm not trying to, and what I don't want to do is chase away somebody because I have some opinions that aren't relative to necessarily to what we're going for here. But that doesn't mean the one thing I don't want to see people do, Lord's name in vain, that's what I don't want to see in the chat. I don't want to see like over the top, like violent behavior, I guess. But look, I've been in the barracks. I don't care how many F words you put in there. But contextually, just use it as an expletive and not as a verb. But yeah, I know, I get it. And we've got, look, there's a lot of stress points on us. Let it out here. Let it out here. Porcupine, what I missed in the past 5 to 10 minutes, just had to talk with my boys about respecting their mother and sister. Man, I know that talk. Talking about mostly Army stuff. I went into a little bit of Army stuff. So if you want to catch it on replay, that's, you'll just catch it. But, kind of the state of society. But the Army needs Jesus, like all of us. The military needs Jesus. G.I. Joe engaged in fornication with an M203, M2, yeah. All right, let's get into the reading, guys. Jehu, anointed king of Israel. We knew it was going to happen, right? We knew it was going to happen. God said it was going to happen. This is what I want you to do. The prophet Elisha summoned a man from the company of the prophets and said to him, tuck your cloak into your belt, tuck your shirt in, take this flask of olive oil with you and go to Ramoth Gilead. When you get there, look for Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi. Go to him, get him away from his companions, and take him into an inner room. Then take the flask and pour the oil on his head and declare, this is what the Lord says. I anoint you king over Israel. Then open the door and run. Don't delay. I got a mission for you. I've got a mission for you. I love that. Tuck your cloak in your belt. Tuck your shirt in. We're just talking about the military. Get your hands out of your pockets. One of the reasons why I wear my sleeves up too, they wouldn't let us wear our sleeves up in the Army. They do it in the Marine Corps. They don't let us do it in the Army. Technically, they're allowed to. We're allowed to, but it's up to commander's discretion. There's some sort of cultural weird thing where they never allow you to do that. And it makes it's so dumb because especially in the old BDU Woodland BDUs and the old desert DCUs that we wore, dude, they looked awesome with the sleeves up. Anyway, so he goes, tuck your shirt in, get this oil, take it up to Ramoth Gilead. I want you to get there, look for a guy named Jehu. He's Jehoshaphat's son. Get him away from his friends, take him into a quiet area. I want you to go anoint him. I want you to tell him why you're anointing him. He's going to be the new king of Israel. But this is quiet. Get out and do it. So the young prophet went to Ramoth Gilead. When he arrived, he found the army officers sitting together. Why is this a military thing? I have a message for you, commander, he said. For which of us? Asked Jehu. For you, commander. Oh, Commander Jehu. I guess he would need to. Jehu got up and went into the house. Then the prophet poured oil on Jehu's head and declared, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anoint you king over the Lord's people, Israel. You are to destroy the house of Ahab, your master, and I will avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the Lord's servants shed by Jezebel. The whole house of Ahab will perish. I will cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, son of Ahijah. As for Jezebel, dogs will devour her on the plot of ground at Jezreel, and no one will bury her. Then he opened the door and ran. Get out! That's a lot to put on somebody. Hey, you know your boss, the commander in chief? Yeah, you're going to get rid of him. You can get rid of him. You're going to get rid of him. This is going to be like Solomon walking into the palace and just going Godfather on everybody. You remember that, Nico? Remember Solomon going out and dealing out justice? There we go. Ahab, house of Ahab, going to get wiped out. And Jezebel, dogs will devour her on the plot of ground at Jezreel, and no one will bury her. Here's what I like. God remembers. God forgives, mind you. God forgives. And I want to point something. This is a message that was given to me by a friend of the show who's been on before. I need to get him back on here at some point. He's Orthodox. He sent me this. Even in the Old Testament, satisfaction of guilt comes from a repentant heart, not blood sacrifices. And he sent me this passage. But if they confess their sins and the sins of their fathers, that they transgressed and disregard me, and walked contrary to me, and that I also have walked in hostility to them and destroyed them in the land of their enemies, then their uncircumcised heart will feel ashamed, and they will render satisfaction for their guilt. And I think that this is very important to remember, even in the Old Testament. And we've seen this. We've seen this a few times. Naaman is a great, I actually mentioned this back to him. It's a beautiful thing how consistent that God is. We had a ritual for cleansing your sins. That's not the only path to redemption. It's still taught, you could still beseech God for forgiveness. And Naaman is a great example of that. This guy wasn't a believer, right? These are guys, look, the Canaanites and the other folks doing horrible things. Horrible things. And the Israelites were instructed to wipe them out. But even then, you got a general of the Arameans who doesn't believe, struck with leprosy, goes to seek the prophet Elisha, doesn't go to seek God, doesn't believe God, Elisha, when he tells him to go wash his ass in the river 7 times. But he finally does it, and it happens. And immediately, Naaman's not dumb. Immediately, God's real. I'm sold. He's watching the leprosy right off of him. That's amazing. Here, have all of this money. Doesn't take it. Not Elisha doesn't take it. But he was ready to give it to him. He fell down right there. We're going to see it a lot in the New Testament. But we've seen even Ahab, the evilest of kings, prays to God and gets something out of it. Right? This is the whole reason his household isn't getting wiped out while he's alive. He puts on sackcloth. He humbles himself. God sees. God remembers. God sees. Always remember, you're never fooling anybody. You're never fooling everyone, because God is all-knowing. He's everywhere. And he's all-powerful. The omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. God keeps the receipts. That's right. Oh, yeah, we're going to get into the good stuff soon. This is where a lot of red pill Christians use the scripture. But yes, God forgives. But the consequence of your actions remains. Consequences remain in life. It's when we move on. That's where, and sometimes you'll even avoid the consequences, but that's not guaranteed. This isn't prosperity gospel. Prosperity gospel is for Mammon and all those other jackwagons out there peddling success for money. No, that's snake oil, folks. Of course, y'all know. I will avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the Lord's servants shed by Jezebel. This woman is evil. Maybe more evil than Ahab. Ahab bears the responsibility for letting Jezebel have this reign of terror. So maybe his sins are worse, because he could have stopped it, but he didn't, because he was weak and he was evil. He was an evil, weak man. Jezebel's a strong, evil woman. And they are the Boris and Natasha of Kings, of the Book of Kings. So, prophet tells him all this, runs out. When Jehu went out to his fellow officers, one of them asked him, "Is everything all right? Why did this maniac come to you?" Probably looks like he just saw a ghost. You just look like somebody stepped over your grave. Maybe, Nico. Maybe. Bible question: Jezebel's queen. What's her role? Yeah, she's kind of like Queen Mother. She's kind of like Cersei. If you ever watch Game of Thrones, she was married to Ahab, and now she's mother to these people, but she's like still in power. Like I said, she she keeps kind of a grip on power, even though these other kings, she's had I think 2 kings up at this point, and she's still running it. Nah, I need the Old Testament because many new Christians tend to avoid the Old Testament. Yeah, that's a sad thing, and it's not. And I don't think it's. That's why I recommend people, once you get to a certain maturity level in your faith, you read the Bible like we're doing it, cover to cover, right? You get so much more context on what's going on. You don't understand exactly how bad Jezebel is until you've read pretty much all of Second Kings up to this point, and maybe some of First Kings, too. Maybe I think some of First Kings. She's bad. Ahab's bad. What's the significance here? Right? You won't understand why the claims that people make about David raping Bathsheba when there's no evidence of that, unless you read the whole story and then read the whole part of the Bible about David, and you're like, this isn't true. There's nothing mentioned about that. You don't. The weight of the prophecy pointing to Christ isn't as heavy just reading Matthew and the genealogy. Old Testament points to the New Testament. New Testament fulfills what the Old Testament talks about in Jesus. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Jesus, I am, or who are you? I am. The significance of what he says back in the Old Testament. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And there's so much to pull out of, especially like I said, it's tough because of the rules and how heavy-handed God is in the Old Testament, how seemingly heavy-handed he is, because there's a lot of what I call Old Testament justice coming down on people. But this is after really bad stuff. Like, again, Saul, he put a whole village to the sword because they talked back to him. And he still was in power. David still held his blade. The part about the Old Testament is there's folks like David, like Saul, like Elijah, like Elisha, like Daniel, like Joseph, like Jacob. Jacob's a scoundrel. Jacob's not a great guy. He's a shyster lawyer. He's not a good guy, but he's obedient. And he learns his lessons. There's so much for new Christians, especially people coming from places where I've been a bad guy. I've done bad things. How does God still love me? All you have to do is look at Jacob. All you have to do is look at Saul. Before he becomes Paul, not King Saul in the Old Testament, Paul in the New Testament. They do bad things. They are not fun people, right? But then things change. What's up, MR? So Jehu comes out after this weird meeting, and he's asked by his companions, his brothers in arms, his battle buddies, what was that all about? You know the man and the sort of things he says? Jehu replied. That's not true, they said. Tell us. Jehu said, here's what he told me. This is what the Lord says. I anoint you king over Israel. They quickly took their cloaks and spread them under his, spread them. Hold on, let me read this correctly. They quickly took their cloaks and spread them under him on the bare steps. Then they blew the trumpet and shouted, Jehu is king. Oh, it'll be soon to be shyster. Yeah. Well, Jacob isn't a lawyer either. He's just a shyster, but it just felt like the quote needed to be said. They took him seriously. Look, they might have thought that dude was a maniac, but they knew he was a prophet. And they took what Jehu said seriously immediately. Take cloaks off, put them on the ground. No, you don't walk on bare ground anymore. You're king over Israel. They blew the trumpet and shouted, Jehu is king. And Jehu kills Joram and Ahaziah. Here we go. So Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram and all Israel had been defending Ramoth Gilead against Hazael, the king of Aram. But King Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds the Arameans had inflicted on him in the battle with Hazael, king of Aram. Jehu said, if you desire to make me king, don't let anyone slip out of the city to go and tell the news in Jezreel. Then he got into his chariot and rode to Jezreel because Joram was resting there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had gone down to see him. When the lookout standing on the tower in Jezreel saw Jehu's troops approaching, he called out, I see some troops coming. Get a horseman, Joram ordered. Send him to meet them and ask, do you come in peace? The horseman rode off to meet Jehu and said, this is what the king says. Do you come in peace? What do you have to do with peace? Jehu replied. Fall in behind me. The lookout reported, the messenger has reached them, but he isn't coming back. So the king sent out a second horseman. When he came to them and said, this is what the king says, do you come in peace? Jehu replied, what do you have to do with peace? Fall behind me. I don't know the context behind this, what he's saying. But basically, it sounds like he's rallying them to the revolution. The lookout reported, he has reached them, but he isn't coming back either. The driving is like that of Jehu, son of Nimshi. He drives like a maniac. Hitch up my chariot, Joram ordered. And when it was hitched up, Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, rode out, each in his own chariot, to meet Jehu. They met him at the plot of ground that had belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. When Joram saw Jehu, he asked, have you come in peace, Jehu? How can there be peace? Jehu replied, as long as all the idolatry and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel abound. Joram turned about and fled, calling out to Ahaziah, treachery, Ahaziah. Then Jehu drew his bow and shot Joram between his shoulders. The arrow pierced his heart, and he slumped down in his chariot. He's dead. Through the heart with an arrow? Bye, son. Jehu said to Bidkar, his chariot officer, pick him up and throw him on the field that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding together in chariots behind Ahab, his father, when the Lord spoke his prophecy against him? Yesterday I saw the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declared the Lord, and I will surely make you pay for it on this plot of ground, declares the Lord. Now then, pick him up and throw him on that plot in accordance with the word of the Lord. Boom! Do we all need to talk about what happened with Naboth? Let's go back. See if I can find it. I think it's in 1 Kings. Naboth's vineyard. Ahab said to Naboth, let me have your vineyard to use for a vegetable garden. Oh, a vegetable garden. Remember this vegan? Naboth said, no, this belongs to my family. We're going to keep it with our family. So Ahab, boo-hooing, goes home and whines to his wife. Why are you sullen? Why won't you eat? Why are you such a beta, Ahab? Oh, Naboth wouldn't sell me his vineyard. Jezebel says, I'll take care of it for you. Proclaim it. So Jezebel says, proclaim a day of fasting and seat Naboth in a prominent place among his people, but seat 2 scoundrels opposite him and have them bring charges that he has cursed both God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death. This, my friends, is bearing false witness in a very, very heavy way. And they do exactly that. Naboth has been stoned to death. And Elijah, and we go through what the wife's not enabling him. His wife is doing it. Ahab's a beta. Like we said, Ahab is Prince John in Robin Hood, the old Disney cartoon, sucking his thumb and holding his ear. He says, Elijah says to Ahab, he says, I am going to bring disaster on you. I will wipe out your descendants and cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will make your house like that of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and that of Baasha, son of Ahijah, because you have aroused my anger and caused Israel to sin. Dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. This is all coming back right now. Dogs will eat those belonging to Ahab who die in the city, and the birds will feed on those who die in the country. And here we go. This is actually what I was referring to either. When Ahab heard these words, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and fasted. He lay in sackcloth and went around meekly. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite. Have you noticed how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has humbled himself, I will not bring this disaster in his day, but I will bring it on his house in the days of his son. And there's a part in here. I'm trying to find out where it is. Here it is. Then say to him, this is what the Lord says. In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood. Yes, yours. And you might think that initially you might think of that as that's where how Ahab's going to die. No, the blood of his sons. And again, God is still merciful. And Ahab doesn't completely repent, but he does a little bit at least. Enough for God to decide to give enough grace for him to not have to see this. Pick him up and throw him on the field that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding together in chariots behind Ahab, his father, when the Lord spoke this prophecy against him? Yesterday I saw the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declared the Lord, and I will surely make you pay for it on this plot of ground, declares the Lord. Now then, pick him up and throw him on that plot in accordance with the word of the Lord. When Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw what had happened, he fled up the road to Beth-Hagan. Jehu chased him, shouting, kill him too! They wounded him in his chariot on the way up to Gur near Ibleam, but he escaped to Megiddo and died there. His servants took him by chariot to Jerusalem and buried him with his ancestors in his tomb in the city of David. In the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah had become king of Judah and was evil in the sight of the Lord. Here's my favorite part. Jezebel killed. Then Jehu went to Jezreel. When Jezebel heard about it, she put on eye makeup, arranged her hair, and looked out of a window. As Jehu entered the gate, she asked, have you come in peace, you Zimri, you murderer of your master? The quote was there peace for Zimri, who murdered his master? She's getting all dolled up. He looked up at the window and called out, who is on my side? Who? 2 or 3 eunuchs looked down at him. Throw her down, Jehu said. So they threw her down, and some of her blood spattered the wall and the horses as they trampled her underfoot. Yeah. Jehu went in and ate and drank. Take care of that cursed woman, he said, and bury her, for she was a king's daughter. But when they went out to bury her, they found nothing except her skull, her feet, and her hands. They went back and told Judah, who said, "This is the word of the Lord that he spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite. On the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's body will be like dung on the ground in the plot of Jezreel, so that no one will be able to say, 'This is Jezebel.'" Taunting him, accusing him from the balcony as he rides up. Oh, it's righteous. Dude, Jezebel's end's the best. Hanging off that balcony. Her attendants, the eunuchs. You're not a eunuch, are you? 2 or 3 eunuchs look down at him. He goes, "Is anybody here on my side?" Jehu must have been well liked and respected. And not only that, Ahab and Jezebel were probably not real well respected. They probably were afraid of Jezebel and probably not all that impressed with Joram. He goes, "Who is on my side? Throw her down." And they right out the window. And she clipped the wall on the way down and hit the horses on the way down and then got trampled by said horses. Those horses were part of the best way to think of this. The horses were Jehu's horses and the horses of the chariot of his men. They go in and have a beer and something to eat. Jehu went in and ate and drank. And then he was like, "Take care of her. She was a king's daughter. God's one step ahead of you, buddy. He's going to make sure what he said is going to happen." All they found was her skull, her feet, and her hands. That means the dogs ran off with the bones after they were done eating her. You could say that on Emmanuel, but at the same time, let's give credit where credit's due. Jezebel is a true villain, not one of these, not one of these just malcontents out there mouthing off. She was intelligent, not intelligent enough to honor God, but charismatic, beautiful, and absolutely 100% corrupt and evil and well in the service of demons, probably. I mean, she was a foe, and she was a thorn in the side of righteousness, but not much of a thorn. But yeah. Oh, Jezebel's comeuppances. It's so sweet. So sweet. But we're not done yet. Biblical righteousness abounds. Ahab's family is killed. Now, there were in Samaria 70 sons of the house of Ahab. So Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria, to the officials of Jezreel, to the elders, and to the guardians of Ahab's children. He said, "You have your master's sons with you and have chariots and horses, a fortified city and weapons. Now, as soon as this letter reaches you, choose the best and most worthy of your master's sons and set him on his father's throne. Then fight for your master's house." Dude, he's like, "All right, pick a new ruler, put him up there. Get ready for me. I'm coming, and hell's coming with me." But instead of hell, it's It's the righteousness of the Lord. Let's go back. Let's go back once again and remind everybody just exactly what's going on here. Let's see. Here we go. This is the Lord talking to Elijah back when he was talking about putting Jehu in charge, putting Hazael in charge, putting and going and finding Elisha. Also, anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Mount Abel Meholah to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escaped the sword of Hazael. And he did. He's done so far. And Elisha will put to death any who escaped the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him. There are some people who say that this Grammy performance was a response to all the people coming out against that evil kind of clothing company or whatever that was putting the kids through all the weird stuff. You have your master's son with you, and you have chariots and horses, a fortified city, and weapons. Now, as soon as this letter reaches you, choose the best and most worthy of your master's sons and set him on his father's throne. Then fight for your master's house. Balenciaga. Yes, MR. That was what I'd heard was it was a response to all the heat that they got. Depends, Nico. But they were terrified and said, if 2 kings could not resist him, how can we? Just remember, he had just slain 2 kings. So the palace administrator, the city governor, the elders, and the guardians sent this message to Jehu. We are your servants, and we will do anything you say. We will not appoint anyone as king. You do whatever you think best. Well, he already told you what to do. Then Jehu wrote them a second letter saying, if you are on my side and will obey me, take the heads of your master's sons and come to me in Jezreel by this time tomorrow. Damn it, man. Now the royal princes, 70 of them, were with the leading men of the city who were rearing them. When the letter arrived, these men took the princes and slaughtered all 70 of them. They put their heads in baskets and sent them to Jehu in Jezreel. When the messenger arrived, it's a lot of baskets he's carrying, he told Jehu, they have brought the heads of the princes. Then Jehu ordered, put them in 2 piles at the entrance of the city gate until morning. Remember, they're not supposed to do it longer than overnight. This is going all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to Joshua. The next morning, Jehu went out. He stood before all the people and said, you are innocent. It was I who conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Know then that not a word the Lord has spoken against the house of Ahab will fail. The Lord has done what he announced through his servant Elijah. So Jehu killed everyone in Jezreel who remained of the house of Ahab, as well as all his chief men, his close friends, and his priests, leaving him no survivor. His priests were probably servants of Baal as well. Just to put that out there. Because Elijah was the only one And there was like one other guy that they didn't like. That the house of Ahab didn't like. I don't think it was their priest. He never says anything I like. That's what that was part of the problem with Elijah and Elisha too. No survivors, no quarter, scorched earth. You're all done. Jehu then set out and went toward Samaria. Both at Beth Eked of the shepherds, he met some relatives of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and asked, "Who are you?" They said, "We are relatives of Ahaziah. We have come down to greet the families of the king and the queen mother." Take them alive. Bad. Wrong place, wrong time. Take them alive, he ordered. So they took them alive and slaughtered them by the well of Beth Eked. 42 of them. He left no survivors. Probably should have picked a different time to come visit, fam. After he left there, he came upon Jehonadab, son of Rechab, who was on his way to meet him. Jehu greeted him and said, "Are you in accord with me as I am with you?" "I am," Jehonadab answered. "If so," said Jehu, "give me your hand." So he did. And Jehu helped him up into his chariot. Jehu said, "Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord." Then he had him ride along in his chariot. When Jehu came to Samaria, he killed all who were left there of Ahab's family. He destroyed them according to the word of the Lord spoken to Elijah. Many, many years ago. The word of the Lord is undefeated. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Servants of Baal killed. Then Jehu brought all the people together and said to him, "Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him much." Ooh. Wait a minute. Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests. See that no one is missing, because I am to hold a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who fails to come will no longer live. But Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the servants of Baal. Hey, we're going to have a big Baal party. Everybody's invited. Don't be that guy who doesn't show up. Don't be the one who doesn't show up. Are you talking? No, they didn't kill Elijah. Elijah basically ascends into heaven. He's the one he is basically picked up in a whirlwind in a fiery chariot, while Elisha watches. They didn't kill your boy Elijah. They didn't kill our boy Elijah. But we're having a big Baal party. You're all invited. You're all expected to be there. This isn't optional. Don't let me catch you not coming. I'll kill you. We're all gonna worship Baal. It's gonna be a great big party. There's gonna be women. There's gonna be drink. Come on and do it. There could be a DJ. Jehu said, "Call an assembly in honor of Baal." So they proclaimed it. Then he sent word throughout Israel, and all the servants of Baal came. Not one stayed away. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from one end to the other. And Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe, "Bring robes for all the servants of Baal." So he brought out robes for them. Then Jehu and Jehonadab, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. Jehu said to the servants of Baal, "Look around and see that no one who serves the Lord is here with you, only servants of Baal." So they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had posted 80 men outside with this warning: "If one of you lets any of the men I am placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his life." As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, "Go in and kill them." Let none of one escape. The real red wedding. So they cut them down with the sword, the guards and officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day, pissing on the temple of Baal. So Jehu destroyed Baal worship in Israel. However, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. No, nobody's perfect. The Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all of his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. In those days, the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel. Hazael overpowered the Israelites throughout their territory, east of the Jordan, in all of the land of Gilead, the region of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, from Aroer by the Arnon Gorge through Gilead to Bashan. As for the other events of Jehu's reign, all he did, and all of his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehu rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria. And Jehoahaz, his son, succeeded him as king. That time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. But like I said, Israel doesn't have a good king, ever. Once Solomon dies. Jehu's not a good king. He's an avenging. He is an avenger of the Lord. But he doesn't reign well. He doesn't turn away from the sins of Jeroboam. He falls right into it like the rest of them. And God's going to start to slowly let them know that he's not happy with them as a people by reducing the size. Slowly but surely. He's like the Crusades, good intent, poor execution. No, I'd say it was great execution, great intent. I'd say it's more like the war in Iraq, right? Lightning fast, gets it done, head off the snake, but then hangs around, doesn't know what to do. Same thing with Afghanistan. So Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, OIF. He should have just left or just done things right. Instead of just middling around, not any better than anybody else. There you go. There you go. MR, the old come to the foreclosure houseboat sale so we can arrest you. Yeah. Or, yeah. That's what he should have done was kind of like, wow, the Lord does things the way they should be done. I'm surprised they didn't just bolt the doors from the outside and light the temple on fire. But I guess that's just not as personal. Porcupine scorched earth. He went throughout the kingdom and took out each and every faction, entity, comrade, bitches. Wow. He puts the red wedding from Game of Thrones to shame. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because he's already been just laying waste. Nico, I like this comment. Maybe God was a little jelly from his kids worshiping fake parents. What does God say early on? The Lord is a jealous God. Our God is a jealous God. He does not Have patience. For what's the number one commandment? What's number two? Whatever. You know, don't worship. There's no one to put before the Lord. Period. So, yeah. All right. Hour and a half, guys. Not bad. No, thou shalt not kill is not the first commandment. Let's go. All right. We need a refresher, guys. Nope. Not getting out of this. Not getting out of this now. God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So first and second. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, nor on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Hence why I don't like the Lord's name taken in vain here in the chat. And I will mute and ban for that. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that they may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And there you go, Mimar. There you go. So that's a good way to start the week off right. Start the week off right. We got Jezebel getting killed. We got Ahab's comeuppance finally coming in. Look, it might be ugly, guys. God keeping his word here. It's not pretty. It just didn't. We cheer and everything because these are people who have done evil and have abused God. But just remember, when we sin, we're doing something very similar. So maybe we shouldn't be as happy about this to many of them. Or maybe, I don't know. We should be sad that their hearts were not dedicated to the Lord. Their hearts were as in rebellion to the Lord as east is to west, to use biblical terms. They were as far from the Lord as east to west. It's sad. I don't want any of those people in Hollywood to be the way that they are. I don't. I wish they'd all find God. And while I know they're going to sin, at least repent of it. But what we see is not that. Openly mocking, taking for granted. That's not it. That's not it. Those are people living in the world, in love with the world. And because they're in love with the world, and all the hedonism that comes with it, they hate God. They hate the very idea of him. Because with God there's a reckoning. With God there is an accounting. There's accountability. And they don't want to realize that Jesus is the answer. Because the faith in Jesus means faith in the things faith in his commandments, faith in what God stands for. God stands for truth and goodness and the point of everything. He asked for perfection from us, but he understands he's not going to get it. But what he wants is earnest labor towards that perfection. Recognition for when we do things wrong and love for him. And love for him is hate for sin. Don't let the world get you down. Don't let the world black pill you. Don't be a doomer. Don't go on Glenn Beck on me. Besides, he's a Mormon. There are hard truths in the Bible, but there is deep salvation. There's deep love. And remember Christ on that cross. Forgive them, Father, for they know what they do. Speaks just as much to us as it does for the folks who are doing the stupid, miserable, degenerate things, thumbing their nose at God because it's cute, because it'll get them attention, because they think they're being edgy, or maybe they're just miserable. Maybe they're just miserable because the emptiness where God should be residing in them, they've pushed it away. Don't let them push away your joy. Their issues, keep your kids away from them. Keep your kids away from them. But be joyful that there are places in this country, in this world, where they can't reach us. Keep this strong, and they won't reach you there either. Pray for them. Lord knows they need prayer more than anybody else, maybe. Because what more of a victory, what sweeter a victory against Satan is it that when some clown like Sam Smith accepts Jesus into his heart, turns away from that life of hedonism and debauchery, and maybe become one of God's good guys. You never know. You never know. Paul murdered Christians left and right. He ended up writing half the Bible, or half the New Testament, it seems. Everybody liked Saul, King Saul, until he let power go to his head. Moses didn't have any faith in himself. Abram was scared and didn't think that God was going to look out for him in certain times. Jonah succumbs to jealousy and indignation. Peter denies Christ. We falter, we fail, we screw up, we do stuff we got way better sense than doing. We've come from it, and we're heading towards it, probably. Some things are petty, like not being able to get along with somebody, getting upset over a disagreement. Giving into lustful urges. Some things are great, are serious, like high level serious, like walking away from God. Your salvation is precious. You're precious to God. Be somebody worth keeping around. And that starts with a relationship with Christ. Let's all have a great week coming up, right? All of us. Let's do well. Let's do well. And remember, right? That fire and brimstone, it's real. It's very real. So is that amazing grace. All right, Emmanuel, faith in Jesus means turn your life from sin, a mirror to the face that most won't want accountability. It's a big thing, Emmanuel. But it's our job to be in the faith, hold God's word to us and many around us, and it's the gradual change in us and our promise to the Lord. Remember, everyone, don't be a Jack Murphy. And Porcupine telling everybody good night. May God bless us and keep us. Amen. So the Porcupine, Emmanuel, MR, Nico. Let me scroll back up here. Alex, Blaine. It's a good show tonight. Dresden. I noticed you coming in here, Dresden. My man, Jim Wiseman. Hopefully you're still tuning in. Mr. Branscombe. I think I said Nico. Never forget you, Nico. Blaine and Mr. Matthew Felty. Everybody, if in case I missed somebody, because it was a long list. I'm glad that it's long. I'm glad that the chat is active. But to all you guys who are in the chat, thank you very much. I appreciate what y'all do for the show is make it better, right? Gives it more depth, gives it more personality, and shows that it's not just me being a fool all the up here putting a camera in my face and just talking to myself, talking by myself. Got you guys here. To everybody who's listening, glad you're giving me your time. For whatever reason, you just don't feel like commenting. That's fine. I don't care. I'm just glad to have your attention. I'm glad that you are getting something out of what I'm saying. If you're catching me on the replay, hey guys, hopefully you're doing all well. I love all you guys. I'm glad. Oh, hey, and Parachin Baka popping in. Hey. How's it going, Parachin? Blaine told me how to pronounce your name, but I forgot. So I'm just going to say Parachin. Thank you guys for tuning in, catching me when you can. If you like this stream, like it, subscribe to it, hit the notification so you get it, share it, support the show however you go. Look, guys, I don't need, like I said, I don't want you to send, I'm not monetized and I can't get super chats, but even when I get to that point, I don't want super chats. I don't want y'all to subscribe to locals and pay me $5 a month. This is not a money grab. But if you want to support the show, there's no better There's no better advertisement than word of mouth. Tell folks in any other streaming spaces that you're in, chatting in. Tell your friends. Tell anybody. Paru Chinbaka. You know. Okay, Bline. Tell your friends. Tell people who you think need to hear it. That's great. Or think you might be interested. Doesn't matter. Support that. If you want to support the show, help it grow. Help it grow. But if we didn't get any more people, I'd like to grow. I'd like to reach more people. But you guys are great to me, right? Remember when I get as big as Nick? When I get as big as Nick, I'm never going to get that big, and I won't forget. I remember. I'm kind of loyal to a fault. So, anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. Emmanuel, have fun acing that CDLA test. Blaine, wash your hands and get that certification. Everybody, you guys have a good evening, good night, and God